I always had a special interest in moss. There's always been something alluring about it to me. I think it has to do with its primeval nature. I guess you could call it a garden underdog. I think it's one of those things that people don't go to the nursery to buy a new moss for their garden. They want the showy flowers, the pretty tree. In the moss garden, one of the maybe not so obvious themes is in some respects time. That's why when a tree falls in the moss garden, we try to incorporate it as part of the moss garden. We have about 50 species of mosses that we know of here. Probably one of the most common is Menzies tree moss. And let's see if I can pull out It's called tree moss because it's got a trunk like a tree, and then the leaves at top, kind of like a small palm tree. I always say every moss is my favorite moss, but this is definitely one of my favorite mosses.
Once you broach the world of moss, it's an endless fascination because just a tuft of moss is an entire world to a whole host of organisms that are microscopic. It's literally like an entire world in just one tiny clump of moss. So I am sitting up here on top of my garage roof because this is where all the moss grows. And I'm gonna collect some of these clumps of moss. I take that moss and then I soak it in water. The next day I squeeze the water out and then I look under the microscope. And usually what I'll find are a whole host of organisms like tardigrades, which can survive in space, rotifers, which also can survive in space, but they're not as cool looking. Every clump of moss is like going on an entire wildlife safari, right, just from my own rooftop, with all the different organisms that live inside of it. I'm a wildlife gardener, which means I'm a very lazy gardener, so I don't fight moss. I embrace it. I don't actively try to grow it, but I don't discourage it either. So out on my tree, there's moss growing all up the side. I have got a great stairway going to the basement where I've let all the moss grow, and it's just beautiful. There's little ferns growing out of it now, and it's this little tiny garden growing in our basement stairwell.
The moss in itself can be a specimen, so to speak. They can have open areas with moss. They can have rocks that are mossy, and it looks better than bare rocks. It just adds a lot in terms of softness and greens and texture, and just makes the whole area look a lot more natural.
Living in the city can be very disconnecting from nature, but here we have a whole ecosystem that you can preserve and observe and care for and just be completely fascinated by if we just let nature exist just a little bit in our yards and on our buildings.